"Stop. He's already dead," tore through the emergency room just as the heart monitor flattened into a single unforgiving line. And for a split second, even the machines seemed to hold their breath, as if the room itself knew something irreversible had just happened. The German shepherd lay motionless on the steel table, his massive chest still, his fur matted with blood and antiseptic, his eyes half closed in a way that made everyone look away, because it felt too final to face. The veterinarian stepped back slowly, gloves trembling, voice low and certain, as she said there was nothing more medicine could offer.
"There's nothing more medicine can do."
And the silence that followed was heavier than any scream could have been. Before we begin, don't forget to hit like, repost, or share, and subscribe. And I'm really curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Back to the story. A woman near the wall broke down first, her hands covering her mouth as sobs escaped anyway, and a young boy clutched her jacket, shaking, whispering the dog's name again and again, as if repetition alone could pull him back from wherever he had gone. Nurses lowered their heads, years of experience telling them this moment was over, that miracles were stories people told themselves to survive loss, not something that happened under fluorescent lights at 3 in the morning. Someone reached for a sheet. That was when the doors slammed open. Officer Dean Wallace rushed in, uniform wrinkled, breath ragged, eyes wild with a desperation that didn't belong in a place built on calm procedure and quiet acceptance. He didn't ask what happened because he already knew, and he didn't slow down when the vet tried to stop him, because something deeper than reason was driving every step. Dean had carried this dog out of a burning warehouse only an hour earlier, had felt his heartbeat then, strong and stubborn against his own chest, and he refused to believe it had simply decided to quit now. "No," Dean said, his voice cutting through the room with a force that made everyone look up. "Not like this, not after everything he survived." He moved to the table, resting one hand on the broad shoulder, as if grounding himself in something real, something solid, while the other hovered over the still chest. The vet shook her head, tears in her eyes, telling him the heart had stopped, that continuing would only hurt those still holding on. Dean leaned closer, lowering his voice until it was meant only for the dog.
"We've got a call tomorrow, partner. You hear me? We're not done yet."
Telling him about the call they'd answer tomorrow, the quiet morning walks he was promised, the kid who still needed him to come home. Then, without waiting for permission, he positioned his hands in a way none of the medical staff recognized, not CPR, not defibrillation, but something slower, more deliberate, something learned outside textbooks and training manuals. His fingers pressed with controlled rhythm, not force, not panic, but intention, like he was reminding the body how to remember itself. "Please," the woman whispered, though she didn't know who she was begging anymore. The vet started to speak again, to stop him, to protect everyone from false hope, when a nurse froze mid-step, staring at the monitor with wide eyes. A faint blip appeared, then vanished, then came again, fragile and uncertain, like a knock on a door from someone unsure they were welcome. The room held its breath, and Dean didn't stop, because whatever he was doing, whatever he believed, he was all in now, and there was no turning back. The second pulse came stronger than the first, no longer a question, but a statement, and the flat line on the monitor began to rise and fall in uneven waves that made every person in the room forget how to breathe. The nurse whispered the dog's name like a prayer, fingers hovering over the controls, afraid that touching anything might break the fragile moment unfolding in front of them. The veterinarian stepped closer, disbelief written across her face, years of clinical certainty cracking as she watched life argue its way back into a body she had already let go. Dean felt it before anyone else did, a faint resistance under his palms, a subtle tightening of muscle that told him the shepherd was no longer gone, just fighting his way back from a place most never returned from. He adjusted his hands, slowing the rhythm, speaking quietly now, not commanding, not begging, but reminding the dog who he was, what he stood for, how many times he had charged forward when fear told him to stay down. His voice shook as he spoke about trust, about loyalty, about how partners never leave each other behind, even when the world says it's over. The dog's chest rose suddenly, shallow but real, and a sharp gasp ripped through his body like a spark catching dry wood. The young boy cried out, falling to his knees, laughter and tears mixing in a sound so raw it cut straight through every adult heart in the room. The vet moved fast now, instinct taking over as she called out orders, oxygen, fluids, monitoring every sign with hands that no longer trembled. What moments ago had been a place of quiet surrender exploded into controlled chaos, fueled by something far more dangerous than hope: belief. As the shepherd's breathing steadied, his eyes fluttered, unfocused at first, then slowly settling on the one face he seemed to recognize, even through pain and exhaustion. His tail twitched weakly against the table, just once, but it was enough to break Dean completely. He pressed his forehead gently to the dog's head, eyes closed, whispering a thank you he didn't fully understand yet.
Thank you, buddy, thank you.
Because he knew this wasn't science alone, and it wasn't luck either. It was the stubborn refusal to accept loss when love still had something to say. Minutes later, as the room calmed and the machines settled into steady rhythms, the veterinarian finally spoke, her voice quiet and honest. She admitted she had never seen that technique before, never believed something so unorthodox could make a difference, but she could not deny what stood breathing in front of her now. Dean only nodded, knowing some lessons aren't taught in classrooms, but carved into people by grief, by failure, by the ones they couldn't save. As the shepherd was wheeled toward intensive care, alive against all expectation, the officer stayed behind for a moment, hands still stained, heart still racing, understanding that this story would be told again and again, but never fully explained. Because sometimes, when everyone else says stop, when the world decides it's finished, all it takes is one person who refuses